You wake slowly, and your eyes open to a ceiling you don't recognize, wooden beams, dark with smoke and time, crisscrossing above you like ribs in a chest. The air smells like cold ashes, dried lavender, wool, and a faint whiff of candle wax. And silence. Thick silence. Not the hum of a refrigerator or the buzz of a phone or the creak of modern floorboards, but real, immersive quiet, broken only by the soft crackle of a low-burning fire in a hearth across the room, and a sigh of cold air sliding along the stone wall like someone exhaling in their sleep. Today we descend into the silken, strange, and occasionally suffocating world of medieval nobility. Where lace collars were stiff enough to cut circulation, where being delicate was a full-time job. And where waking up in the wrong body might just mean you're expected to marry someone twice your age before breakfast. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you really like the way I tell stories here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is for you. It's always comforting to know that there are more people from around the world trying to fall asleep here. Now, dim the lights. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Can you imagine waking up? Not in your bed, but in a feather-stuffed canopy. In the year 1324, in France? You wake, you blink, and the bed beneath you registers, vast, lumpy, too soft in some places and not soft at all in others. It's stuffed with feathers, clearly, and layered with heavy wool and velvet blankets, edged in embroidery you don't remember ever seeing before. Your pillow smells faintly of beeswax, and when you lift your hand, it looks unfamiliar, pale, slim, too clean. The nails are short and manicured, not polished or painted, just well-maintained in a way that doesn't feel like yours. The shift you're wearing pulls strangely around your hips as you try to sit, tightly woven linen with a neckline drawn shut by a little ribbon you can't seem to find with your fingers. The fabric clings, and you realize with rising awareness that you're not wearing anything you own. You're not even wearing something someone else owns. You are wearing history. And your body, your limbs, your voice, your skin, feels like it's been borrowed. It takes you longer than it should to realize what's missing. Your phone. Your bedside lamp. The faint electronic glow that usually follows you through mornings like a tired ghost. There is no signal here. No sound of traffic. No heater humming in the background. You might try to convince yourself that this is a dream, but your breath hangs visible in the cold air, and your nose is stinging, and the firelight flickers too specifically against the stone wall for any of this to feel like sleep. Then you hear the 3 knocks. Sharp, rhythmic, too polite to be panicked, too familiar to be casual. The door creaks open without waiting for permission, and 2 young women slip in with their heads bowed low. They curtsy, not casually, not quickly, but deeply, with the kind of reverence that makes your stomach lurch. One of them carries a jug of steaming water, the other a folded cloth and a wooden comb. They both greet you as "my lady," and you try to respond, but your voice catches somewhere between your ribs and your throat. They either don't hear it or politely pretend not to notice. They move without hesitation. One stirs the hearth, the other pulls open the curtains, and a faint gray light floods the chamber. Not sunlight exactly, but that heavy, clouded morning glow that makes everything feel damp and half-buried. You are helped to your feet. You don't resist, but you don't cooperate either, you're simply moved. Your slippers appear. A chamber pot vanishes. A silver basin is placed on a stand and filled with water that steams like a spell. You stare at it, unsure what to do, until one of the girls gestures gently. You dab your face with the cloth she offers, and her small smile tells you you've done something right. The floor beneath your feet is cold, covered in a rush mat that feels soft and gritty and faintly herbal. Your shift is removed and replaced without ceremony. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the burnished metal mirror propped in the corner, not glass, but polished bronze or tin, cloudy with use, framed in carved wood. Your face looks like it stepped out of a portrait, pale and composed and vaguely unreal. Your hair is heavy, darker than you remember. When one of the girls begins brushing it, the other gently buttons your linen. You notice the absence of privacy only once, and then realize it's not coming back. And just when you think perhaps this strange routine has come to an end, that maybe now you'll get a moment to sit and breathe and possibly scream into the pillow without anyone noticing, the taller maid steps forward and says with quiet warmth, "Shall we begin dressing, my lady?" As if everything until now has merely been preparation. As if what comes next will require even more endurance than whatever this is. You don't know your name. You don't know the rules. But you're standing barefoot on a cold stone floor in a borrowed body, in a castle you've never seen, in the year 1324. And whatever happens next, you're already fairly certain of one thing: there's definitely no coffee. You might have assumed, in your old life, that dressing yourself was a private affair. Something done in a rush, with mismatched socks and a podcast playing in the background, probably while holding a piece of toast in your mouth. But here, in this world you've woken into, dressing is a team effort, and an ordeal. You are not trusted to do it alone, and frankly, by the third layer, you understand why. They begin with the chemise, a long linen shift with wide sleeves and a neckline that grazes your collarbone. It's soft but stiff with starch, faintly scratchy at the seams, and smells like the drying room near the kitchen hearth. Over that comes the kirtle, which you learn is not just a charming medieval word but a fitted linen or wool underdress that requires one girl to hold it taut while the other laces it up the back. The tugging starts gently. It does not stay gentle. With each pull of the laces, your ribs are coaxed into cooperation and your lungs are given less and less room for ambition. Your arms, you realize, are now permanently pinned to your sides. Not by malice, but by design. The next layer is the gown, rich, dark wool trimmed in a color you can't quite name, somewhere between mulberry and rust. The sleeves are long and dangling. Useless, beautiful things. They drag behind you like regrets. One girl fastens the front with a row of tiny hooks, while the other smooths the skirts with the kind of reverence usually reserved for altar cloths. You might think there's a belt involved. There is. But not the kind that holds anything up. This one is decorative, silver rings linked together, weighted slightly, worn at the hips and designed to say absolutely nothing useful except "I am wealthy and completely ornamental." Then come the shoes. Soft leather, narrow, barely more substantial than slippers. You're told these are indoor shoes, suitable for gliding across polished floors but laughably unprepared for mud, snow, or reality. Your old sneakers would be embarrassed for them. And the hair. Oh, the hair. You're made to sit again, and one of the girls, with the composure of someone raised to do this daily, begins plaiting and twisting your long, unfamiliar hair into a crown of braids. She pulls gently but firmly, smoothing with her palm, fixing strands with pins you can barely feel until they're there. Then a linen veil is draped over your head and secured so tightly around your temples that you begin to question if blood flow is optional. Finally, a circlet is added, not heavy, but symbolic. This is how people know you are important, not by what you say or do, but by what's perched on your skull. Your face is left bare, though someone dabs a bit of lavender water on your neck. The scent is sharp and clean and vaguely medicinal, but preferable to the unwashed wool smell clinging to your sleeves. There is no makeup. No mascara. No concealer. Beauty here is the absence of blemish and the suggestion of moral purity, which is to say, a face that never betrays thought or fatigue. The whole process has taken nearly an hour, and at no point were you asked what you liked. Every layer speaks for you. Speaks about your rank, your marriage, your family, your fertility, your piety, your silence. Your body is now a message in fabric, and the message is, this woman belongs to someone. You try to shift your weight and realize you can't bend at the waist. Sitting will have to be a carefully negotiated act, and anything dropped on the floor is dead to you. One of the girls stands back, folds her hands, and says softly, "You look perfect, my lady." You smile. Or try to. It doesn't quite reach your eyes, which are already beginning to ache from the effort of appearing composed. They gesture toward the door. It's time to be seen. And if you're wondering what exactly you've been dressed for, don't worry. You'll find out soon enough. Because in this world, beauty isn't about how you feel. It's about how well you hold still under the weight of expectation. You are led, or rather glided, carefully, step by slow step, down a corridor that smells faintly of damp stone, old firewood, and something baking that you're pretty sure is meant for someone else. The heels of your soft shoes make no sound on the floor, which you find unnerving. Back home, your slippers used to flap cheerfully against the tile. Here, you move like a ghost someone forgot to exorcise. The dining room is small, at least compared to what you imagined a noble household might use. It's not a banquet hall. It's a solar, a private, upper-floor chamber meant for comfort, with a small hearth, a few rush-strewn chairs, and a long table already set with bread, bowls, and a jug of something you hope is tea but probably it isn't. Your husband is already seated at the head of the table. He glances up when you enter, nods politely, and gestures toward the place beside him. You might think there'd be a kiss on the cheek, a greeting, a murmured good morning. There is not. You're lucky to get eye contact. A chair is pulled out for you, and you lower yourself into it with as much grace as someone wearing 30 pounds of fabric and no abdominal control can manage. There is no cushion. There is also no coffee. What there is broth. A bowl is placed in front of you, thin, steaming, mildly yellowish, and garnished with what might be herbs or might be decorative weeds. A hunk of coarse bread is set beside it, and a knife. Not a fork. Just a knife. Because forks, as you now recall, faintly, haven't quite caught on in this region yet, and are still viewed by some as unnecessary, effeminate, or worse, foreign. So you break the bread with your fingers and hope no one notices how unfamiliar it all feels. Your husband dips his bread in his bowl. You do the same. Across the room, a steward stands near the door, silent and waiting. A boy hovers with a jug. A girl wipes the edge of the table even though nothing has spilled. You're being watched. You are always being watched. You chew slowly. Not because you want to savor anything, you can't taste much through the nerves anyway, but because you're fairly certain there's a right and wrong way to swallow, and you haven't been briefed on the difference. No one speaks. You're aware of the shape of your hands, the way your sleeves rest, the exact placement of your elbows. The bread is dry. The broth is hot enough to scald your tongue but not your uncertainty. Your husband says something about the wool merchants, that they've agreed to drop prices again this spring. You nod like you understand. He mentions the bishop's visit. You murmur something agreeable. He doesn't notice what you say, only that you've said it at the right time, in the right tone, with your eyes lowered respectfully, and your mouth forming the correct expression. Someone refills your cup. It is not tea. It's warm ale. Flat, brownish, slightly sour, but cleaner than the water, you assume. You sip. You smile. You remember a morning, not so long ago, when you rolled out of bed 15 minutes before a meeting and ate peanut butter off a spoon while texting someone about your schedule. That life feels centuries away, which, at this point, it may well be. The rest of the meal passes in silence. You chew, swallow, nod. You respond when prompted, and otherwise remain still. The food is serviceable. The ceremony is not. You realize, somewhere between the second piece of bread and the third not quite acknowledged glance from the steward, that this isn't nourishment, it's performance. And you're already exhausted from the rehearsal. When the meal ends, your husband stands. You stand. He leaves. You remain. And the girl with the jug asks softly if you'd like to wash your hands. You don't know what to say, so you nod. Because here, it's not about appetite. It's about appearing as though you've never really needed one. After breakfast, you are not given a task, you are given a destination. Your ladies-in-waiting appear just as your husband disappears, as if the two events are in perfect, silent choreography. They don't announce where you're going, and frankly, they don't need to. You're no longer someone who makes choices. You're someone who is guided, redirected, and placed. They take you down a narrow hallway where the windows are tall and too cold to open, past a tapestry depicting a lion that looks suspiciously like a badly drawn dog, and through a wooden door with iron hinges that moans like it has complaints older than the house itself. The room you enter is long, low-ceilinged, and full of women, 3 of them, to be exact, seated at various angles around a struggling fire, each holding a piece of embroidery, and each looking like they've been doing exactly this since the dawn of time. You are guided to a chair that has clearly been waiting for you. There's a small cushion, a folded linen cloth, an embroidery hoop already stretched and threaded. This is not an invitation, it is an expectation. You sit. You might think, at first, that this is your reward, that after layers of wool and silence, here is the sacred space of women. A room without men. A place for soft laughter, shared secrets, maybe even real conversation. But you quickly realize this is not a sanctuary. This is another stage. And every woman in this room is performing the same role, composed, occupied, and utterly contained. You pick up your needle. You attempt to stitch. The thread snags immediately, and when you try again, it somehow loops backward and pierces your own sleeve. The woman next to you, with fingers like instruments and the posture of a coat rack, is crafting an entire hunting scene with golden thread. Her deer has eyelashes. Your flower has collapsed into something that looks like a startled spider. You glance across the room. One of the women, younger than the rest, is crying. Not weeping. Not gasping. Just crying. Silent tears rolling down her face while she continues to stitch an ivy border with machine-like precision. No one looks at her. No one asks why. And that tells you everything. This isn't where you come to fall apart. This is where you learn how to do it without making a sound. The conversation is low, shaped like smoke, barely visible, curling around names you don't know. A cousin's betrothal. A child's tooth falling out early. The feast next week. Whether it's too soon for Lady Birth to show her face again, considering. You don't know what happened to Lady Birth, but the silence around her name is enough. You might think you could offer something to the conversation, maybe a question, or a nod of sympathy, or the universal gesture of shared female suffering. But you don't know the rules. So you keep stitching, slowly, as if the act itself might earn you belonging. Someone shifts in her seat. Someone else murmurs a prayer. No one asks you what you think. No one cares that you pricked your finger and are now bleeding into the hem of a tulip that was already doomed. You hear yourself think, can you imagine telling one of your friends you spent 3 hours embroidering a cushion while a woman sobbed next to you and no one said a word? You wonder how that group chat would respond. Outside, a bird chirps, a single, confused note, like it, too, has found itself in the wrong century. Inside, nothing changes. And here's the thing, no one in this room is wasting time. Time is being folded, stitched, shaped into symbols. Flowers, birds, initials. Little proofs of usefulness. No one is reading. No one is writing. No one is laughing. You begin to understand, very slowly, that this chamber isn't here to entertain women. It's here to shape them. There's no bell for when it ends. No call for tea. One of the older women simply rises, smoothing her skirts, and the others follow her lead. You stand, too, because you don't want to be the only one sitting. And just like that, the performance is over. The embroidery is folded. The room is cleared. The crying girl disappears down a different hall. No one ever spoke her name. And you? You walk away with your hoop of terrible flowers and the quiet knowledge that womanhood, in this life, is a job you are expected to perform, beautifully, silently, and with very, very clean stitches. When the bells begin, you're already standing. You don't know how you knew to rise, but your body seems to be learning the rhythm of this place, the way every hour has a shadow behind it, shaped like duty. A servant appears to drape a heavier shawl around your shoulders, one that smells faintly of incense and old beeswax. She murmurs something about the chapel. You nod, because you don't have a better word, and you follow. The corridor is colder now. You pass tapestries you hadn't noticed before, saints with lifted hands, angels with sorrowful faces, a woman kneeling beside a lion with tears falling into her veil. There's no conversation. Just footsteps and the weight of what's expected. The chapel is small, narrower than you thought, with a low ceiling and rough stone walls that don't quite meet evenly at the corners. It smells like damp wood, smoke, and reverence. Candles flicker on an iron stand by the altar, their flames dancing like they're trying to escape. A priest stands near the front, already murmuring. He doesn't pause when you enter. You're not the audience. God is. You kneel on a thin mat of rushes, and it takes longer than it should because your gown is structured like a tent and your knees feel as if they've been wrapped in wood. You clasp your hands because the others do, and you bow your head because that seems to be the safest place to look. The words are in Latin, or something close to it, and they flow like river water over rocks you can't quite understand. You mumble where you're supposed to mumble. You cross yourself when you see the others move. You say Amen in time, though your voice is quiet and your stomach is starting to ache from the cold. This is the moment, you think, the sacred one, the inner peace, the candlelight flickering just so. You wait for it. You wait to feel something. You think, isn't this the part where grace is supposed to arrive? But instead, all you feel is, watched. Not by God, but by everyone else. You might think religious guilt is a modern invention, born from missed therapy appointments and unanswered emails. But here, it's older, heavier, institutional. You don't feel shame for what you've done. You feel shame for what you are, a woman, breathing, flawed, occasionally opinionated, possibly unclean, likely a source of temptation, almost certainly a moral risk. The priest's voice rises and falls, speaking of obedience, of Eve, of sacrifice. You nod along, unsure whether you're agreeing or just surviving. You think of that one time, back home, when you skipped a friend's wedding because you were too tired and told yourself you'd make it up later. And now here you are, kneeling in a stone chapel in a borrowed body, waiting to be forgiven for sins you don't remember committing. Someone coughs. Another woman kneels beside you and sighs. The air smells stronger now, incense, sweat, wool. You keep your eyes on the candlelight because looking at anything else makes you feel too visible. The priest speaks of the body as a vessel, a burden, a battleground. You feel every pin in your hair like it's a reminder. You wonder how long this will last. You wonder how many prayers are required before you're allowed to be quiet in your own mind again. You think of the crying girl in the embroidery room, of the silence that followed her, of the way no one reached for her. And now here you are, sitting in silence again, trying not to breathe too loudly while a man explains your unworthiness in carefully measured syllables. When the final Amen arrives, it does not feel like a release. It feels like a recess. Everyone rises in a practiced rhythm. You do the same, stiffly, your knees complaining. No one looks at each other. No one says a word. You walk back down the corridor in silence, your shawl tugged tighter, the smell of wax clinging to your sleeves, and you wonder, not for the first time, what exactly you are being prepared for. Because here, even prayer feels like a form of surveillance. You don't see him coming. You never do. He simply arrives, like frost, or fog, or the kind of news that always travels too quickly. One moment you are in the garden, or rather, a well-managed strip of land behind the manor lined with dormant rosemary and half-dead hedges. The next, a quiet clearing of the throat, and there he is. Your husband. The Lord. The reason you have this gown, this chamber, this title you don't fully understand. He is taller than you expected. Not ancient, not young. His hair is graying at the edges, but his face is smooth, trimmed, and carefully composed. He smells of wool, cloves, something faintly musty, and the faint suggestion of effort. His boots are polished. His belt is ornate. His gaze lands on you like a weight, but not a heavy one, more like the press of a stamp into wax. You rise, because you're supposed to. Not in surprise, but in ritual. He does not ask you to stand. He simply expects it. When you meet his eyes, he smiles, not warmly, not unkindly. More like a man greeting a successful investment. He asks how you've spent your morning. You answer. He nods. He compliments your embroidery, which he hasn't seen, and your piety, which he assumes. You murmur something agreeable about the chapel. You think of telling him about the crying girl. But you don't. He reaches forward and touches your elbow, lightly. His fingers are clean and soft, but the gesture is not. It's not affectionate. It's a reminder that you are his. That this arm, this silence, this body that keeps nodding, all of it belongs to the same domain as the hives behind the orchard and the servants in the laundry. You might think, for a moment, that this is what marriage looked like back then, and you'd be right, in some ways. This is not cruelty. This is possession. Kind possession, polite possession, dressed in warm words and scented oils. But possession, nonetheless. He talks about the steward's report, about tenants in the southern fields, about the feast that will take place next week. You will be required to wear the green gown. You will be seated beside his cousin. You will smile. You will speak Latin, or French, or nothing, depending on what makes the best impression. He touches your hand again. It lingers longer this time. His thumb brushes your knuckles. There is no pressure in it, but the message is still clear. You are doing well. You are doing exactly what a woman in your position is meant to do. Standing, nodding, smiling with your mouth and not your eyes. He tells you he must go, the bishop awaits. He kisses your cheek. It is not unpleasant. It is not anything. And then he is gone. You exhale, not from fear, not from love, but from release. The kind of breath you didn't realize you were holding until the door closes behind him. You sit on the bench by the wall. The rosemary bush leans a little in the wind. Somewhere in the kitchen wing, someone drops a pan. You think of home, your real one, and wonder what it would feel like to choose who touches your elbow, who asks for your smile, who waits for your answer instead of assuming they already know it. But here, no one waits for your answer. They already believe they know what you're going to say. And if you're very good, if you keep nodding, and walking, and wearing the right sleeves, they may never find out otherwise. You are called the lady of the house. Which sounds lovely, doesn't it? Grand. Regal. Like you've reached the highest tier in some ancient game of life, where the prize is a heated bath and people bringing you things on platters. You might even imagine a few polite curtsies, a cup of wine delivered on a silver tray, a woolen robe handed to you as you glide from room to room offering kind but firm directives. But no. Being the lady of the house here is a bit like being the manager of a company where you have no idea what the company actually does. The employees don't particularly like you, and every time something breaks, someone shows up at your door asking what you plan to do about it, preferably with grace, and while wearing your good veil. The cook is angry again. You don't know why. She doesn't say. She just bangs the ladle louder and glares in your direction, muttering about the wine stores and how someone miscounted the flour. The laundress is crying because someone else used the good soap. The steward has taken 2 geese from the pantry and claims it was the will of your husband. And the firewood is half wet again, which you will now be blamed for because you chose the woodkeeper's niece as a scullery maid last month. And apparently that means you've endorsed damp kindling as a household policy. You are technically in charge of provisioning. That means overseeing the food stores, the linens, the candles, the spices, the beeswax, the ash for soap, the poultry count, and the seasonal slaughtering schedule. But you're not allowed in the buttery, can't speak to the steward without a male witness, and must only offer suggestions, never instructions, to the servants, unless you want to be labeled overbearing, which in this time period is the equivalent of social death by passive-aggressive embroidery circle. So you nod. You frown thoughtfully. You say things like yes, I'll speak with him, and perhaps next time, we might, all while knowing you'll never actually speak with him and next time will be exactly the same. One servant bows too low. Another doesn't bow at all. You try to remember which one your husband trusts and which one your mother-in-law doesn't, because managing a household here is not about cleaning or cooking, it's about managing loyalties. And no one writes that part down. The linen closets are in disarray. Someone took the blue sheets for the guest room without telling you. There's a fungus growing in the west storeroom that everyone pretends not to see. And someone forgot to salt the herring properly, which means at least one noble guest next week will make a face during supper, and you'll be the one smiling through it while slowly dying inside. You think of home again, your real home, and how chaotic your kitchen always felt. The toddler smearing yogurt on the floor. The dog barking at the microwave. The broken drawer that you never got around to fixing. And suddenly, it feels peaceful by comparison. Because at least there, the chaos was yours. Here, the chaos has a hierarchy. And you're perched at the top like a very well-dressed scapegoat. It's a strange kind of power, being obeyed just enough to be responsible, but never enough to change anything. And so, like any woman who has ever been placed in charge of something she can't control, you learn to smile. You learn to delegate without seeming cold. You learn to take the blame graciously, as if it's a privilege. And you develop a sixth sense for when something is about to go wrong, usually just before the steward clears his throat or the chambermaid says, "My lady, there's something you should know." Because here, being in charge, is less about authority, and more about being held responsible for things you never touched. Kind of like every group project you've ever done. It begins with a messenger. Always. A boy, no older than 12, appears at the gate with muddy stockings and an exaggerated bow. He announces, with far too much energy for the hour, that your husband's cousin's wife's sister is passing through the region and would be ever so grateful for a place to stay. For the night. Maybe 2. Possibly 3. She's not sure yet. You know exactly who this is. Lady Isolde. The woman who once asked if your lute playing was meant to sound like that, and who introduced you at court by accidentally forgetting your name. She is cold, thin, and precise, the human embodiment of a butter knife. Her compliments feel like inspections. Her silences feel like accusations. And now she's coming here. To your house. To your table. To your guest chamber that still smells faintly of mold and marital disappointment. You have 4 hours to prepare. Which is 3 hours and 55 minutes too many. Immediately, everything becomes your fault. The staff scrambles, the cook panics, the steward appears out of nowhere with a furrowed brow and a list of items that are suddenly your responsibility, even though none of this was your idea. You're asked whether you prefer the venison or the roast goose. Whether you'd like the good silver or the good enough silver. Whether the lavender sachets in the guest linens are too much. You answer politely. You try to sound gracious. But inside, you are screaming in lowercase. You change gowns. Twice. Not because you want to impress her, but because she will mention it, subtly, if your neckline is last season's stitching or your sleeves have too much embroidery. She will smile as she says it. She always smiles. By the time she arrives, you are already tired. She enters with a breeze of rose water and judgment. Her cloak is perfectly draped. Her dog, because of course she has a dog, is carried like a baby and refuses to look at you. She calls you dear. She looks around the hall like she's searching for dust, then compliments the tapestries in a tone that suggests they are quaint. Dinner is a battlefield of restraint. She sips her wine like it's beneath her. She tells a story about a dinner with the Queen's cousin, and how some women at court simply don't know how to host properly. Her glance lingers a moment too long in your direction. You smile. You chew. You imagine hurling your goblet at the wall. She asks after your embroidery. Not your health. Not your thoughts. Not your children, if you have any. Just your embroidery. As if your needlework is the only part of you that matters. You excuse yourself after supper, pleading fatigue. She nods, as if she's relieved. The minute your chamber door closes, you exhale like someone who's been holding her stomach in for 3 hours straight. You sit by the fire and think, in your world, The real one, you could decline a visit. You could text an excuse. You could say, "Not this week," and stay in sweatpants with takeout and the blessed freedom to not be charming. But here? Here, your home is never really yours. It is a stage. And you are expected to perform. You wonder if she'll stay the extra night. She usually does. And so you do what women have always done when enduring the company of people they cannot stand but cannot escape. You nod. You swallow the words. And you plan, in vivid detail, what you would say, if you ever could. They come quietly, the way they always do. Two maids, one older, with careful hands, and one who yawns behind her sleeve. Neither of them speaks much. They're used to this part of your day. You stand while they loosen the ties of your gown, layer by layer, until the weight of silk and stiff brocade falls away from your shoulders and lands in a heap at your feet. Your skin prickles in the air, not from shame, but from the temperature. The corselet comes next. It's unlaced slowly, like letting go of a very formal lie. You feel the pressure leave your ribs in waves. For the first time all day, you can breathe without geometry. The fabric falls limp in the maid's hands, and you don't miss it. Not the pinching, not the bruising seams, not the way it turned your body into something ornamental and unyielding. You exhale through your whole spine, like you've just handed back someone else's expectations. The fire's still going, but it hasn't kept up. The air in the chamber is sharp now, with that dry, stony smell of cold walls and damp wood. Your shift clings to your skin like a ghost with too many opinions. The younger maid brushes your hair with quick strokes, 30 times, just like she was told, and plats it loosely down your back. You wash with tepid water from a bowl that smells faintly of iron and lye, dabbing behind your ears and at your wrists while pretending it feels refreshing. No one talks about the fact that your husband doesn't sleep here. He has a bedchamber of his own, further down the corridor, and a set of obligations that rarely seem to include being beside you. You aren't supposed to mind. You're supposed to be grateful. Plenty of women have husbands they can't escape. Yours escapes you, every night, and that, apparently, is a privilege. The maids pull back the curtains to your bed. It's high and heavy and smells faintly of lavender sachets tucked into the corners, mixed with the musk of stored linens, and the faint ash scent that lingers from the hearth. The mattress rustles under you, straw and feather, soft in theory, but slightly lumpy in practice. The blanket they tuck around you is thick and stiff, patterned with faded embroidery that someone's great-grandmother probably stitched while whispering prayers under her breath. You watch the room grow dimmer by degrees. The light withdraws from the corners, settles near the fire, then recedes again. A candle flickers. One of the maids mumbles good night. The other curtsies silently, already half asleep on her feet. They leave you alone with the crackle of the fire and the quiet hum of your own thoughts. And it's strange. Because for all the ceremony, the bowing, the brushing, the soft candlelight, it still feels like no one saw you. You close your eyes, pressing your cheek into the cool linen pillow. You think of everything you didn't say today. Everything you swallowed behind a smile. All the tiny, exquisite lies that make up a lady's daily costume. The thank yous, the pleasantries, the restrained gestures, the silent screams. You think of the girl in the mirror, and the servant girl in the hall, and the noblewoman across the table who told you, politely, that your pearls looked so quaint. You think about how you used to end your nights, hot shower, oversized t-shirt, maybe a guilty scroll through your phone before finally turning out the light. No layers. No audience. No rituals but your own. Here, every breath is staged. Every silence is someone else's idea of decorum. And yet, you are warm. You are safe. You are still here. And in the flickering shadows of your canopy bed, you let yourself wonder, just for a moment, what it would feel like to live this life without the costume. Without the corset. Without the constant, exhausting choreography of nobility. But for now, you are here. In a castle. In a silence that listens back. You exhale. One last breath. Tomorrow will come. with laces, and curtsies, and things you aren't allowed to say. But for now, it's just you. And the stillness. And the cold. You open your eyes. Somewhere, a breeze shifts. Not a castle breeze. Not the kind that sneaks down stone corridors and smells faintly of candle smoke and wool. This one is gentler. It brushes your cheek with something faintly familiar, a hint of detergent, the whisper of clean cotton, the soft buzz of distant traffic, or maybe the hum of a refrigerator. The fire is gone. So is the weight of linen blankets and embroidered formality. And for a moment, just a moment, you're not sure which life is the dream. You stare at the ceiling above you. It's not carved oak. It's smooth drywall. The pillow beneath your head is synthetic, not stuffed with feathers and prayers. You shift slightly, and nothing creaks. The room smells like yourself. Like your shampoo. Like home. There's no servant pulling back the curtains. No gowns to be chosen. No husband sleeping in a chamber down the hall. Just you. Still breathing. Still whole. The weight of the castle has lifted, but something in you still remembers it, the way it felt to be admired, but not known. Adorned, but not listened to. Safe, but not free. And now, back in your own body, in your own bed, with your own soft edges and messy thoughts, you carry a different kind of strength. You know what silence costs. You know what it means to be looked at, but not heard. And somehow, even here, in the quiet hum of modern life, with your phone somewhere nearby and your to-do list sleeping beside it, you feel a little more awake. A little more aware. A little more willing to choose your own story. Because this time, when you get out of bed, no one laces you in. And you don't need anyone's permission to breathe. So, if you're still awake, thank you for staying with me through the silks and shadows, the candles and courtyards, and the quiet ache of being admired but never really known. Stories like this remind us that even in castles, even behind brocade and ceremony, a woman could feel invisible. And maybe, just maybe, part of remembering history is letting her be seen. If this journey stayed with you, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is for you. And if you'd like more stories like this, slow, strange, sometimes sorrowful, but always human, you know where to find me. Sleep well tonight. And until next time, good night, from Clara Finch. Because women's stories always deserve a soul.